In a quiet North Carolina suburb, a 911 call shattered the calm with a chilling claim, a couple's final act of despair. But what police found inside the Morrisville home raised far more questions than answers. A brilliant engineer from Kolkata, celebrated for her intellect and warmth, lay dead under suspicious circumstances. What began as a reported suicide would unravel into a case that spanned continents, shattered a family, and exposed a dark truth hidden in plain sight. Stay with us. This is the story of Nabaruna Karmakar. Nabaruna Karmakar was born and raised in Behala, a culturally vibrant neighborhood in southwest Kolkata. From an early age, she stood out for her academic excellence and quiet determination. Her father, Tapan Karmakar, was a general manager at the Steel Authority of India Limited, and her mother, Sipra, managed the household. Growing up in a joint family, Nabaruna was instilled with discipline, humility, and a deep respect for learning, values that shaped her path. She attended Vidya Bharti School, where teachers remembered her as a standout student. Her interest in science and mathematics, coupled with a methodical approach to problem-solving, made her a top performer throughout her school years. Encouraged by her family and inspired by her father's engineering background, she chose to pursue industrial engineering at Manipal University, one of India's leading private institutions. While excelling academically, she maintained a strong connection to her roots. During holidays, she returned home to participate in Durga Puja celebrations, enjoy home-cooked meals, and spend time with extended family. Friends and relatives often described her as calm, generous, and intellectually curious. She had a love for Rabindra Sangeet, Indian classical music, and traditional Bengali cuisine, elements that continued to ground her identity even as she planned for a future abroad. Her admission into a PhD program at North Carolina State University marked a significant step. Though it meant leaving home, she embraced the opportunity with confidence and gratitude. Her parents, though nervous, fully supported her ambitions. They maintained close contact through video calls, sharing updates and offering emotional support from thousands of miles away. Even after moving to the U.S., Nabaruna's ties to Behala remained strong. She visited when possible, stayed in touch with old friends, and remained deeply involved in family matters. Those who knew her described her as someone who, despite achieving academic and professional success, never lost sight of where she came from. After completing her degree at Manipal University, Nabaruna Karmakar moved to the United States to pursue her doctoral studies at North Carolina State University in Raleigh. Enrolling in the PhD program in industrial engineering, she quickly distinguished herself among peers for her rigorous analytical thinking and structured approach to research. Her academic work focused on systems optimization, contributing to projects that had practical applications in manufacturing and analytics. Adjusting to life in a new country wasn't easy, but Nabaruna adapted quickly. She balanced research and teaching assistant responsibilities with precision, earning the respect of both faculty and students. Outside of her studies, she remained close to a small but tight-knit group of fellow Indian students. With them, she celebrated cultural festivals and kept Bengali traditions alive through food, music, and shared stories from home. Upon completing her PhD, she secured a position at SAS Institute in Cary, North Carolina. The transition from academia to industry was smooth. At SAS, a company known globally for its data analytics software, she took on complex analytical roles. Her colleagues described her as precise, focused, and dependable. She was valued not only for her skills, but also for her collaborative nature. Professionally, she thrived. Personally, she built a life marked by quiet routine. She maintained regular contact with her parents and found time for cultural events when possible. Though not outgoing, she was respected and appreciated by those who worked closely with her. In December 2019, Nabaruna Karmakar returned to Kolkata for a significant event, her marriage to Michael Aaron Matthews, an American citizen. The ceremony was conducted according to traditional Hindu customs, attended by family and close friends. Photos from the occasion show Nabaruna in a red sari, smiling beside her parents and her new husband. Her family viewed the union with optimism, hoping it would mark the beginning of a fulfilling personal chapter alongside her professional accomplishments. After the wedding, the couple settled in Morrisville, North Carolina, a quiet suburb near Raleigh. They moved into a house on Seagrave Place, surrounded by similar residential homes. The area was known for its safety and proximity to tech employers, including SAS, where Nabaruna worked. Their household also included a pet dog, Ralphie, to whom Nabaruna was deeply attached. Neighbors recalled that the couple kept a low profile. They weren't known to socialize extensively, though Nabaruna occasionally exchanged pleasantries during walks or errands. She continued working full-time, commuting to Kerry, and maintaining regular contact with her family in Kolkata. Updates about home life, photos of meals, short videos of Ralphie, or brief calls about everyday topics remained a constant in her relationship with her parents. Friends noted that while Nabaruna remained committed to her job and cultural identity, she appeared more withdrawn socially after her marriage. Her attendance at community events became infrequent. Some noticed she often came alone and left early. These changes were subtle, but noted by those who had known her earlier. No dramatic complaints or outbursts were recorded, but signs of emotional distance began to emerge. The couple suffered a shared loss when their dog Ralphie passed away. According to people close to her, the loss affected Nabaruna deeply. She had been emotionally close to the pet, and its passing marked a noticeable shift in her demeanor. Friends later recalled this period as one in which she became quieter, more introspective, though still dedicated to work and family. Despite any strain, outward appearances of stability continued. There were no public incidents or official reports indicating trouble at home. The perception of a peaceful domestic life remained intact, even as private signs of growing emotional tension slowly emerged. For her parents and colleagues, nothing suggested imminent danger, only a quiet woman, managing her life with characteristic diligence. On the morning of April 14, 2023, a 911 call was made from the home on Seagrave Place in Morrisville. Michael Matthews reported what he described as a double suicide. When officers from the Morrisville Police Department arrived, they found a deeply troubling scene. Nabaruna Karmakar was lying unresponsive on the floor of a small office room. She had 2 gunshot wounds, one to the back of the head and one to her left temple. Her arm was draped over an urn believed to contain the ashes of her recently deceased dog. Next to her body was a typed note suggesting suicidal intent. The room carried a strong smell of gasoline, and a fuel can was found nearby. Bullet casings, the weapon, and household items appeared to be arranged in a manner suggesting a mutual suicide. But investigators were immediately struck by inconsistencies. The angles of the wounds, the lack of gunshot residue on Nabaruna's hands, and the careful placement of props all raised doubts about the initial explanation. Within hours, law enforcement treated the case as a homicide. Surveillance footage recovered from a local Bass Pro Shops revealed that Michael Matthews had purchased a handgun, ammunition, a fuel container, and zip ties just a day earlier, on April 13th. He made the purchase alone. The firearm was matched to the bullets found at the scene, confirming it as the murder weapon. No gun license was registered in Nabaruna's name. The suicide note was also suspicious. Forensic linguists analyzed its content and formatting. The vocabulary and structure did not match Nabaruna's known communication patterns. It was unsigned and typed, unlike her usual handwritten notes. Digital analysis showed no trace of her creating the file on any of her devices. An autopsy conducted by the medical examiner established the cause of death as homicide. The bullet to the back of the head could not have been self-inflicted. Toxicology reports indicated no sedatives or drugs in her system, which disproved any theory that she had been drugged or complicit in her own death. Police noted that Matthews had waited several hours after her death before calling emergency services. The delay provided him time to arrange the scene. In the garage, investigators discovered a tarp and additional zip ties, further suggesting premeditation. The gasoline found inside the house had not been used, its presence likely intended to mislead responders into thinking a larger plan had failed. Matthews was arrested shortly after the autopsy results were finalized. He was charged with first-degree murder. News of the crime shocked both the local community and those in India who knew Nabaruna. For her family in Kolkata, the official version of events came as a painful contrast to the initial information they had received. There had been no suicide. Their daughter had been murdered. The case against Michael Matthews was built on a foundation of forensic science, digital footprints, and timeline reconstruction. From the moment authorities shifted the classification of the April 14th event from suicide to homicide, prosecutors and investigators began assembling a comprehensive profile of premeditated intent. One of the most critical pieces of evidence was the surveillance footage from the Bass Pro Shop store. Dated April 13th, one day before Nabaruna's death, the video showed Matthews purchasing a firearm, a box of ammunition, a red gas can, and a bundle of zip ties. He paid in cash. This timeline aligned precisely with the planning window investigators believed he used to stage the crime. The autopsy provided crucial findings. It established that the shot to the back of Nabaruna's head had likely been the first and fatal wound. Experts testified that the entry angle and lack of close-range gunpowder residue ruled out self-infliction. The second shot to her temple, while damaging, was inconsistent with a self-inflicted trajectory. Both wounds reinforced the theory that she had been killed at close range by another person. Forensic analysis also examined the suicide note found beside her body. Typed on a home printer, the note lacked any personal signature. Linguistic experts reviewed it and concluded it did not match Nabaruna's typical written expression. More tellingly, computer forensic teams found no evidence that she had authored the document. Instead, the document had been created and printed from a device used by Matthews. Digital evidence extended beyond the note. Investigators reviewed Matthews' internet search history and discovered a chilling sequence of queries. Phrases such as, "how to shoot someone and make it look like suicide," "gasoline explosion setup," and "how long does gun residue stay on hands" appeared in the days leading up to April 14th. These searches strongly suggested that Matthews had not only planned the killing, but had researched how to disguise it. In court filings, prosecutors included details about the home scene, the positioning of Nabaruna's body, the urn of their deceased dog placed near her, the gas can beside the door. All of it pointed to a deliberate attempt to craft a narrative. The presence of additional materials in the garage, including an unused tarp and more zip ties, indicated that Matthews may have considered alternate or more complex scenarios before settling on the one executed. Text messages and emails recovered from Nabaruna's phone painted a different reality from Matthews's claim of a joint suicide pact. Her last communications included notes about an upcoming work presentation and a planned video call with her parents. There was no mention of distress or suicidal thoughts. These details formed a powerful rebuttal to the initial narrative put forward by Matthews during his first contact with police. Friends and co-workers also testified that Nabaruna had shown no signs of mental health struggles. One colleague noted that she had spoken days earlier about submitting a new proposal at SAS. Another described her as quietly stressed, but not depressed or withdrawn to the point of suggesting self-harm. These character references further solidified the portrait of a victim with active plans and no suicidal tendencies. The prosecution emphasized that the entire sequence, from the shopping trip to the 911 call, followed a calculated timeline. By waiting hours after the shooting to contact emergency services, Matthews had time to arrange the scene and attempt to construct an alibi. But the inconsistencies in his statements and the overwhelming physical and digital evidence dismantled his narrative. In sum, the state built a compelling case, a homicide disguised as a suicide, driven by premeditation and enabled by easy access to weapons and tools. Matthews' intent was clear, and his efforts to conceal the crime only added to the severity of the charges. The court was presented with a meticulous record of planning, execution, and attempted deception, leaving little room for doubt. When news of Nabaruna Karmakar's death reached her parents, Tapan and Sipra, in Kolkata, they were devastated. The initial report suggesting a suicide was not only shocking, but completely at odds with everything they knew about their daughter. Nabaruna had always been emotionally stable, deeply committed to her work, and in regular contact with her family. The claim of a double suicide, especially involving a firearm, made no sense to them. They refused to accept it. Grief quickly turned into resolve. Tapan and Sipra traveled to the United States to be present for the investigation and subsequent legal proceedings. Though overwhelmed by cultural and legal differences, they were determined to understand what had happened and to ensure that their daughter's story was not distorted. For months, they stayed with friends and supporters, attending hearings, meeting with prosecutors, and tracking every development in the case. Their presence in courtrooms sent a message. Despite the pain, they remained composed and focused. With help from members of the Indian American community, a GoFundMe campaign was launched to support their travel and legal expenses. The outpouring of donations and messages from around the world reflected how deeply Nabaruna's story had touched others. In the months that followed, the Karmakars became quiet advocates, not only for their daughter's memory, but also for awareness around domestic abuse and gun access. They spoke to local media and community organizations about their experience. Though they never launched a public campaign of their own, their example served as a powerful reminder of the emotional strength required to face tragedy with dignity. Tapan and Sipra made it clear in their statements that justice for Nabaruna was not about revenge. It was about truth. Their efforts ensured that the false narrative of a suicide was replaced with the facts of a carefully staged murder. For them, clearing their daughter's name was as important as seeing her killer punished. As the investigation continued, testimonies from Nabaruna Karmakar's friends, colleagues, and community members began to shed light on the final months of her life. These personal accounts, while subtle in isolation, collectively pointed toward a pattern of emotional isolation and potential abuse. One of the most significant statements came from Dr. Kim Nagalpally, a close friend and colleague at SAS. She recalled that Nabaruna had confided in her about increasing verbal tension at home. Though she never explicitly mentioned physical abuse, Nabaruna had expressed feelings of emotional fatigue and uncertainty about her marriage. According to Dr. Nagalpally, she had begun researching legal options and had once mentioned the possibility of separation. Other co-workers described a gradual change in Nabaruna's demeanor. Once sociable and engaged, she had grown more reserved in meetings and stopped attending social functions. Her emails remained professional, but her personal interactions became noticeably limited. A team lead mentioned she had turned down an opportunity for a leadership role, citing personal distractions. Members of the Indian community in North Carolina noticed similar changes. While Nabaruna had previously attended Bengali cultural programs and community pujas, she had not been seen at any such event in the months before her death. When asked about her absence, she would say she was busy with work. Some noted she often came alone and left early, avoiding small talk or discussions about her personal life. Investigators also reviewed private communications, including texts and email drafts. There were no threats or overt signs of danger, but several messages suggested that Nabaruna was under stress. In one message to a friend, she wrote vaguely about walking on eggshells and feeling as though even silence could spark an argument. Though these lines did not provide clear evidence of abuse, they reinforced the idea of a strained domestic atmosphere. Her family in Kolkata, while unaware of specific issues, sensed that something had changed. In recent months, Nabaruna had grown more hesitant during phone calls. Conversations became shorter, and she deflected questions about her home life. Her father, Tapan, later said he had asked her gently if she was happy, but she had avoided answering directly. The absence of any formal complaints or police reports made it difficult to classify these signs as abuse in legal terms. However, the emotional context provided by these testimonies was vital. They illustrated a woman who was deeply private, possibly trapped in an unhappy marriage, and unlikely to seek help until she felt completely safe. For prosecutors, these details helped counter the early defense narrative of a mutual decision. Nabaruna was not someone who showed suicidal tendencies. She was someone who was trying, quietly, to find a way forward. These patterns of behavior, when placed alongside digital and forensic evidence, completed the picture of a victim whose distress had gone largely unnoticed, until it was too late. The legal proceedings against Michael Matthews began with a charge of first-degree murder. The evidence gathered by investigators, ballistics, forensic analysis, surveillance footage, and digital activity formed a strong foundation for the prosecution. Prosecutors in Wake County prepared for a trial that would have involved graphic testimony and detailed examination of the staged crime scene. Matthews initially entered a plea of not guilty. Pre-trial hearings revealed the breadth of the case. The prosecution outlined how Matthews purchased a firearm and other staging materials, then created an elaborate scene to simulate a suicide. The defense, while not disputing certain factual elements, attempted to raise questions about Matthews' mental state and intentions. However, the core evidence, especially the gunshot trajectories and the timeline of the staged scene, remained unchallenged. As the trial approached, discussions began between the defense and prosecution about a possible plea agreement. Matthews faced the likelihood of life imprisonment if convicted of first-degree murder. Ultimately, on May 19, 2025, he agreed to plead guilty to second-degree murder. The plea was accepted in court and formalized under the guidelines of North Carolina's sentencing laws. Matthews received a prison sentence of 13 years to 16 years and 5 months, with credit for time already served. The decision avoided a protracted trial and ensured a conviction without the risk of appeals or jury complications. Judge Keith Gregory, who oversaw the proceedings, noted that the plea was entered voluntarily and was consistent with the facts established during the investigation. The courtroom was subdued during the hearing. Matthews offered no apology or personal statement. Tapan and Nabaruna Karmakar sat quietly through the proceedings. Afterward, they shared their view that while the sentence did not reflect the full magnitude of their loss, the acknowledgement of guilt was a necessary step toward closure. Public reaction to the plea was mixed. Some legal experts agreed it was a strategic decision that avoided re-traumatizing the victim's family. Others questioned whether the reduced charge sent the right message in a case involving clear planning and deception. For the Karmakars, the outcome was bittersweet. Justice was formally acknowledged, but their daughter would never return. If you have finished watching, you are a real fan of true crime. Subscribe to the channel, turn on the bell notifications, and put the like. See you in the next video.